Yes. Well, I started playing well, first of all, thanks for having me. I started playing when I was 7 years old. And I think, like most kids, usually introduced to the game by a parent or an adult of influence, something along those lines. My father played for the longest time, was traveled a lot for work, and he'd come home on the weekend and he'd want to play golf. But at the same time, he's been gone for 3 or 4 days. So he's like, also got to, I want to see my son, but I also want to play golf. So I'm gonna put these two things together. So he put a golf club in my hand, and that was kind of the end of it. And for a lot of kids in Canada, I was like a lot of kids where hockey was my first sport, and then golf was my second sport. And it wasn't until I got older that golf kind of became my first sport. And I loved it so much that I decided from a very young age that I was going to be part of the game in some capacity, whether it was, oh, I'm going to try to play this game for a living, or I'm going to be attached to it in a different lane. I knew right away that I wanted to be in the golf business. I just didn't know how yet. I think a lot of us think, we're good enough to play the game for a living, and then we learn right away we're not. You got to be the top 1% of the 1% to do that. I got into the game. One of my first jobs I ever had in my entire life. I was 15 years old back in 1990 at a retail golf outlet called Dynamic Golf, which is well before Golf Town ever existed or anything like that in Canada on the retail side. And so that is, oh my, that's how many years ago is that? That's 31 years ago. So 31 years ago, and I've worn so many hats in this industry. Worked for Augusta National and the PGA Tour in Canada. Uh, Taught the game, uh, sales and marketing from many different walks of life, broadcasting, radio, TV, play by play. It's been fun, and anytime you do anything in life, if it's your passion, it doesn't really feel like a job. And 31 years later, we're still figuring that one out. So you should be. Yeah, it's been really frustrating recently. Obviously, things have improved in the last few weeks. Speaking from an Ontario perspective and from a Canadian perspective, where other countries were not dealing with what we were dealing with from a COVID regulation standpoint. But golf was very lucky during COVID in the sense that we are one of the industries that were fortunate enough to actually see growth in a time where the rest of the planet, many sectors, walks of life were being shut down, faced with challenges they've never seen before. Their world was flipped completely upside down. Golf saw this resurgence and this spike in participation. And if you look at it statistically, just from a numbers standpoint, you're right. It's very similar to what we saw in 97 to 2000 with Tiger in terms of just people playing the game. But in regards to what type of customer or what type of person was picking up the game, it was a little different this time. And I think it's different in a way where it might stick. A lot more juniors this time around than in 97 to 2000, partly because a lot of the sports that they did play, hockey, baseball, whatever, they weren't allowed to play. So we had all these kids that would normally play other team sports that weren't able to do so, all of a sudden play golf. Because of that, families came back to golf. And we had parents now come back to golf that hadn't played in years. Increase in the female side of things. So I'm really hopeful that this time the participation sticks a great deal more than the last time around. And I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that this time it will. But more recently speaking, to your point, that's why it was so upsetting to hear some of the narrative on social media and out of some politicians about whiny, white, rich people complaining that they can't play golf. And I felt to myself, like, what rock have you been living under that you think that people are upset because golf courses are closed because they're just a bunch of whiny, white, rich people? I mean, golf is as diverse where it comes to color, religion, economic stature than any other walk of lane in society in 2021. I went down to the Docks driving range this weekend in Toronto. And I mean, you take a snapshot of that driving range, and it's a snapshot of the golf industry. Old, young, different races, female, male, bankers, blue collars. I mean, golf touches everything. And when you're a $6.5 billion industry just in the province of Ontario, you don't become a $6.5 billion industry if you're catering to one walk of life or one lane of life. So it was a very frustrating narrative that I'm still surprised that we are still dealing with today. Like, I think I maybe I'm naive because I'm in it so much. I always thought we were past this, and I always thought, especially since Tiger, we're past this. But apparently, there's still dinosaurs out there looking to throw stones once in a while. Yes. I think it's a tough ask, or it's a tough position, because unfortunately, and maybe this changes, who knows, maybe this changes, but unfortunately, a lot of Canadians don't accept the greatness of other Canadians, or don't accept the achievements of other Canadians until they're recognized outside of Canada, or until they get that spotlight outside of Canada, which is maybe why Brooke Henderson is currently the biggest star that we have on a global scale in the game of golf, because she is recognized outside of Canada. Brooke Henderson is not a Canadian story. Brooke Henderson is as big a story on Golf Central, on Golf Channel, NBC, than she is on TSN. And when that transition happens,
Right.
Canadians kind of lose their, for lack of a better term, I don't know if it's an inferiority complex or what it is, but we're very polite, understated people by nature. We're not braggarts.
Right,
We
right.
don't, we wave the flag when it comes time to play for a gold medal in hockey, or support the Raptors when they're trying to win an NBA championship. But as individuals, we are a little under the radar like that. And I think what we need is, unfortunately, is just more acceptance. We need a Corey Connors to go win.
Right,
He needs
right,
to get
right.
out there. He needs to just stop contending and start winning. We need, Mike Weir recently won on the Champions Tour. Stephen Ames won this weekend on the Champions Tour. So unfortunately, I think the answer to the question is global acceptance of those stars outside of it just being a Canadian story. And, it's a shame that that's the way it works. But unfortunately, that's why it's happened for Brooke Henderson. That's why it happened for Mike Weir. He won the most important golf tournament on the planet, right? Almost 20 years ago. So
I can't believe it's almost 20 years ago. But to your point, I think you made a good case there. As far as individual and team sports, I think that's where the line is drawn. People can't relate too much. But I think with the media coverage, I think if we cover it more, and I know you and people like Bob Weeks and people at TSN, and we
have a lot of great writers.
A lot of great, amazing writers who do a lot. But if you look at the Japanese, South Korean, or American golf analysts and people who are putting their time and effort into putting their players in the spotlight, I think we could do more. I think there's a lot more that we could do to educate people about what our players are doing. But I know we're doing the best we can, right? I know you certainly are.
It's interesting too, because we're in a different situation as well, unlike other countries around the world. So like, this is from more of a TV perspective. This is kind of my hat that I, wear from a former life, where talking about, media rights and broadcast rights and things that happen behind the scene. Canada, unlike a lot of other countries, with the exception of shows like Golf Talk Canada and certain media outlets, the tournaments that we watch ourselves and the content that we get ourselves, that we digest, are American productions. We piggyback, for lack of better terms, those feeds. So most of the time we're digesting American produced professional golf content.
Right.
So there isn't a focus on Corey Connors. There isn't a focus on Adam Hadwin. My phone lights up quite often. Why isn't TSN showing Corey Connors? Because the average viewer doesn't understand that TSN is not controlling the cameras. We're not controlling where things are going. We're getting what CBS is sending us, or NBC is sending us.
There's quite a biased opinion as far as how much coverage Canadian golfers are getting. When you're looking at Corey Connors playing over at the Masters or at the PGA Championship this year, we're not really seeing his shots, and that's just blowing my mind. I mean,
it's American production,
right?
But now think about it in a different way. If you're watching the Masters or Open Championship or whatever in the UK, and it's Sky Sports,
right?
And they're piggybacking some of the feeds and cameras to some degree, but it is a UK produced, European produced TV package.
Right.
They have the right and they have the ability to actually focus on, hey, we're going to follow Justin Rose for a while, or we're going to make Tyrrell Hatton part of the storyline because he's from England. We don't have that ability because we don't have our own production, and that's a huge part of it. And also all we can do is do things like what you're doing.
Yep.
Create podcasts, create engagement, shows, and try to drive the awareness that way, and hope that our guys win and our gals win. Because when they win, they can't be ignored.
Yep.
When they're in the final group, they can't be ignored.
You got it.
But when they're 4 groups out of the back or 5 groups out of the back, they're going to be ignored all day.
No, I agree. Well, case in point, Lexi Thompson, this weekend falling apart on the last few holes. I think she had a 5-shot lead coming into the back 9, and her putting let her down. You could almost feel it with all the golf analysts watching that. It got them really quiet. She had it in the bag. Playing from the age of 12, they did that whole profile on her, and then going to at the age of 15, winning her first event and playing in so many U.S. Opens. But I think her time will come. As we go through the season. But I just realized my sound was off for a little while. We've been hearing you all this time. My son just turned on he's my producer, by the way, Adam Kalamat.
I got you. I could hear you.
I know you got me, but I think about 5 minutes ago, he turned my sound on, my microphone through the software that I'm using. But that's okay. This is, a soft launch in many ways, and I certainly appreciate you coming on and talking with me about the game. It's also going to break the ice for myself. I've hosted quite a bit on different types of shows, but it would be in the with actors and producers and directors in the past, because I have a film and television background as well. Except for last year, I finally came back after almost a 10-year hiatus from being in the golf business, and I'm thrilled to be teaching again over at Vic Hatfield's in Oakville, a good little team of players. At Jeff Hatfield, his son is place, and they're doing a great job. And but one of the things I wanted to cover with you, Mark, really important today, is mental health and golf, and getting as our national pastime. I mean, with the amount of golfers playing with no tee times of 12, 13 months, I'm but I don't want people to step away from the game because they tried it out. It's tough. It's difficult. Mm-hmm. It can get expensive. But I think a lot of people are struggling with all the restrictions we've had with the lockdown, and getting outside is going to certainly help with our mental health. So, as a teaching professional, we want to see people get out and learn the game, but hold on to the game as well. What would you say to beginners or people who picked up the game and just left it?
Yeah, ignore what you see on TV because they're just way too good at this game. And I think you're right. I think getting out and getting fresh air and getting away from lockdowns and getting away from the noise that has been COVID is valuable in itself. And that's why I'm hopeful that this participation spike that we've seen is different than the Tiger Woods spike. Because I think the Tiger Woods spike was very much just, oh my God, this guy's so cool. What I just saw on TV, I'm going to go do that.
Yeah.
And then they watched Tiger do something miraculous. And then they went on the golf course and they went, whoa, this is nothing like what I just witnessed on TV. This time around, I think it's a different type of spike. It's the kids, it's the family, like we discussed. So I think they have a better grasp of what it is they're getting into as a sport and as an activity.
Yeah.
And I would suggest people to personally, especially if they're just starting, definitely get an instructor, take lessons. It's important, but don't bite off more than you can chew. That would be my advice to beginners. I don't get to work with beginners very much. Most of the people I work with are fairly down the road, career-wise and whatnot. But from a beginner perspective, I say keep it very simplistic, take some lessons, some good solid fundamentals, and lower the bar for yourself. I don't like people working on too many things at the same time. Yeah. And I think if people keep it simple, keep it joyful, find the little victories, keep little goals along the way, they'll stick with it longer and they'll enjoy it more. My stepson, who is dying to be in the film business, funny enough that's part of your former life, that's his passion. Yeah. Also has a golf passion as well, but he's really only 2-3 years into it. And I know, like at that age, as a teenager, the vertical on how they improve in kids is so much quicker than us adults. But you do have to talk them down once in a while. That you know, just because you've improved X amount in the last 6 months, you're going to hit bad shots. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to wake up in days where the game feels like it's foreign to you. That's what this game
Yeah.
is about,
Yeah.
and that's part of the enjoyment in it. Is that it's you never win. This is an endless game that
Yeah,
you can
it's
play
a.
for the
I
rest of
always
your
say
life.
it's a lifelong pursuit of futility. That's what I always say,
That's
tell
it.
people.
That's
No,
it.
but
And
but as
you
long
either
as
have
you're
to
out there
pursue.
having fun, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
very much.
I like telling people to just go through their fundamentals, learn the fundamentals so they can enjoy the game, because you may not enjoy it if you don't go through your grip, stance, posture, your ball position, alignment, understanding what the game's about, how to get your par, how to, take it out of the rough, what clubs to use. So it's very simple in that way, because I find that, a lot of juniors or people from backgrounds who are not used to getting out onto the golf course or don't have family or friends who were involved in the sport get intimidated. Their first experience is going to a corporate golf tournament, drinking beers and never hitting a golf ball. And then, and that's it.
Right.
So
That's just a 5 hour picnic. That's not
exactly.
going to play golf.
Exactly. Well, look, Mark, thanks for coming on. I'm going to wrap this up by just maybe you could tell me a little bit where we could hear you, where we could see you. Tell me maybe what you're involved in or something you'd like to push. I
Yeah,
know.
just Golf Talk Canada. We're celebrating, I think, 11 or 12 seasons
Wow.
on TSN Radio and TSN TV. So you can catch us every week, pretty much. We never go away. We used to have an off season. We don't have an off season anymore. That's the other thing about golf. And you can catch me on PGA Tour Radio doing play-by-play. Looking forward to getting back on the ground now that the world is starting to open up. I've been working from a studio setup like yourself there, doing play-by-play. And I miss my team, and I miss seeing the guys in person. And you miss the human contact. To your point with the mental health and the game of golf, and so I'm looking forward to getting back on the ground and rejoining the PGA Tour in person to do that. And we just keep plugging away. There's so much to do, so much content. And we're just looking forward to hopefully this is the last year we don't get our Canadian Open. This week I was on
Yep.
the ground doing play-by-play inside the ropes for 4 days at St. George's in Toronto for the RBC Canadian Open. Instead, I'll be in a for hope that this is the last time we have this.
I
But
know.
thanks so much, and
You're
good luck with the
welcome.
podcast.
Oh, thanks so much. I can't wait till live golf comes back. Thank you for everything that you do. And as an ambassador of the game, I'm really thankful for having you on, and keep on doing what you're doing. We're looking at you. You may not get a lot of thank yous except from the family. I only get my accolades from my son and wife myself. So, it's nice to hear from your peers that you're doing a great job. And hopefully we'll be out on the golf course. Maybe I'll see you out there.
Let's get a game. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care.